Hopefully that's adequate.
If you think it might be a bit too low down.
No, it's a good. I think it's in a good place now. I think. Hang on, my trouser is not in a good place.
Well,
No, it's fine. I think we're only from here.
That's good. I'm glad we're only.
Good evening, readers. This is Tilly and Ros from Tilly and Ros's shelf.
From Tilly and Ros's really hideous wallpaper.
Yeah. So we're in Calais. We're doing some voluntary stuff. I persuaded Ros to come along with me, and I also persuaded her to join me in doing Jane Austen July, which is hosted by the lovely Katie from Books and Things and the wonderful Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and they have created the Jane Austen. There. I can't speak anymore.
Can't speak, you're tired. You've been volunteering.
So these two lovely ladies are the hosts of Jane Austen July, Katie and Marissa.
Call them lovely ladies. Lovely ladies is awful.
Okay, do you want to do the introduction?
No, I don't. Katie and Marissa
have created the Jane Austen July tag. Marissa was kind enough to tag me to do this. So because I make my mum do everything that I do, that's kind of the way that we work.
That's payback for all the years when I made you do
the things that
I did.
I have persuaded her to join me in doing this tag. So the way this is going to work is we're going to read the questions, then we're each going to give our answer, and who knows whether we will have the same answer to some of the questions, and then we're each going to explain why we have the answer that we have to the question. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Do I have to do all the gestures that you do? They're definitely a feature of your videos.
Oh yeah, you do. This is
compulsory.
Cool.
Compulsory gestures. Shall I read a question?
Just before we start, I want to apologise for the camera angle potentially, the lighting potentially, and also the wallpaper. This is the situation in our hotel. So my phone we are filming on is currently taped to the back of a chair. We're sat on the bed, and I've taped a torch to the wall for lighting.
We're low tech. We're low tech this time.
We're using all of our resourcefulness and problem solving skills, which I'm sure Jane would have appreciated.
So, first question?
First question.
And this is just too difficult a question.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
so
they started
mean.
with the hardest one.
Mean. Katie and Marissa, you're bad people.
It's not okay.
Yeah. What is your favourite Jane Austen book?
You have to go first with this
I
one.
have to go first. Okay. My favourite Jane Austen book, I just have to pretend I have a favourite, because they're all my favourite. So whenever anyone asks me that, I always say Persuasion.
I think I would have predicted that you would have said that.
You know that I always just say Persuasion.
So my most recently named as favourite was Mansfield Park, which I named in my top 10 favourite books. But basically I just had to pick one Jane Austen book for that, so I picked Mansfield Park because it never really gets a lot of love.
Oh no, that's funny, because I think I picked Persuasion because it doesn't, it's not like
One
Pride
of
and
the most
Prejudice.
appreciated ones.
Not, people undervalue Persuasion because it's slightly lower key. It's
and
not as funny, and
it's the same with Mansfield Park. They're both actually. I think Persuasion is very funny, but it's more kind of almost bitter, like bitter humour.
Well, it's a sadder book, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not that the others are all fun because they have really tough moments, but Persuasion has a sort of a slightly. Well, Anne is actually a bit depressed. Really, is the truth. It's kind of like a story of someone being depressed and recovering from that, isn't it?
That's an interpretation. That's a valid interpretation, I suppose. I think with both Mansfield Park and Persuasion, the humour is not from the heroine. So I think people love Pride and Prejudice because Lizzie Bennet is so witty and like Emma, for example, she's really lively and humorous, to me at least. Whereas Fanny and Anne, they're both like, they're not the funny heroines. So I think that means that sometimes the books are seen as being a bit dull and less lively.
Less lively.
When actually the wit's just in different places.
Absolutely. And I just, I feel for Anne so much.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, so Mansfield Park is the one that I most recently named as my favourite, but really my favourite is all of them. But the one that I always used to say was my favourite was Northanger Abbey. So I would say maybe I'd also give Northanger Abbey.
Northanger Abbey is your favourite?
Because there's something so very endearing about it.
It's silly. It's the silly one.
Oh, it's not silly. It's delightful. It's really, I like, particularly because I actually have gone to the trouble to read some of the novels that it takes the mick out of.
Fair point.
And because of that, like, I get an extra layer of enjoyment out of it. And I just, like, when I first read it, I really kind of massively related to Catherine Morland as this kind of youthful, naive character. So I think I've got that kind of level of enjoyment of it.
And I think maybe like Northanger Abbey is like a great one to read when you're younger, and then sort of Persuasion is a slightly more middle-aged book. Not that it's not, in that she's still young, for goodness sake, Anne. But
she's like 27, she's still, we still see her as young to get married.
Age to get married, but it's a different stage of life in a way.
So we need to keep this a little bit short.
Oh gosh, I could talk about Jane forever. So, who is your favourite Jane Austen protagonist? You go first, Stan.
Without a doubt, Anne Elliot. Which is interesting because you've just said that she's depressed, but well, I'll explain after you give yours.
Oh, no, I'll you carry on now.
Oh, okay.
It's not the same as I was going to choose, so it's okay.
Really? Okay. So I see her as such a role model character. I see her maturity and her fortitude and the way that she approaches things as really like powerful, and the way that she interacts with her family and she improves her family and she works with her sister Mary. She's the only one who has patience with her to support her.
Yes.
And then other heroines of Jane Austen's get thrown into difficult situations, but Anne really thrives in those situations. So when you think of the moment on the cob, the other young ladies that are there, they are fainting, they are hysterical. Captain Wentworth is distraught. And Anne is the one who is there who's saying, this is what needs to be done. And she really like takes charge in that situation, and the way that she is able to do that just makes me admire her so much as a protagonist that I just have a really strong love of her.
I can really see that you do model yourself. Those qualities of fortitude and improving your family.
No, not that anymore. No, I just meant the way that she
she's a calm head when others are all in a fluster.
She doesn't just laugh at her family, and she's willing to work through and resolve her problems. And like her and Captain Wentworth, they go through this huge absence, but it's because that Anne is pragmatic, and I'm really all in favour of pragmatism. And then at the end, she's pragmatic as well, and they have to kind of relearn about each other, and I just like that. It's not all romance with Anne.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Anne and Captain Wentworth is it feels like a real relationship, like real people that's a bit complex and doesn't just follow
it doesn't flow smoothly.
And isn't the classic kind of romantic story. I'm doing the gestures.
Yeah, good, you're learning. Anyway, it's your turn to tell me.
Okay, so whenever anyone would have asked me my favourite Jane Austen character, my answer has always been Emma.
A heroine whom no one but Jane Austen herself will like.
Absolutely. I've always just adored Emma. She's so funny. I love her because because of her flaws. That's why she's such a joy. She's so funny, and she's I love her self-delusion. It's just delightful. But I recently reread Mansfield Park for the first time in a very, very long time, and I always thought of Fanny as being like a real kind of like damp dish rag of a character.
And she's not. She's really not.
And so I'm not going to say Emma, I'm going to say Fanny.
Yeah,
Fanny Price is now
your favourite heroine.
My favourite protagonist.
That's good, because I really love Fanny as well, and I think she gets so talked down. Olive, and I've forgotten the name of her channel. I'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
Has done a video that really defends her, but she's so principled, and
to be able to like hold the line.
A Book Olive, that's the channel name.
A Book Olive, that's it. To be able to sort of hold to her values in that world and with those pressures, and she deals with all those little humiliations and
every single day, and she just takes so much stick, really, like
but not in a way of just sort of then always putting herself second, because in fact she doesn't, because she says, but I am important because my values are important, and I'm not going to compromise or cave. I'm going to be kind and supportive to other people, and I'm going to try. She's a lovely character.
And I think it's really telling the way that people turn to her, and when they have problems, like they seek her out.
Absolutely.
That kind of shows what a good character she is.
Yeah.
Just going back to Emma, I find it really interesting how much you love her, because I'm reading Emma for my Jane Austen July full novel, and I just feel like I actually, at this moment in time, I am Emma. I just am Emma. I don't know, like I feel like the problems that she faces or doesn't face just reflect me so well. So when I was first reading Jane Austen's books, I really, like, Catherine Morland seemed really familiar to me, but now I'm at a point where I'm like happy, stable, settled. Emma is so much more familiar to me. I just see myself in her too much, which I guess is the beauty of it. You read them at different points and you recognise the different characteristics more.
And I think I've always felt that I'm someone who has very good intentions and doesn't always quite manage to get it right, so I could identify with
you get carried away with an idea, perhaps. Anyway.
So next question. Name a book off your shelves that you think Jane would wholeheartedly approve of, and why? Okay, so I thought hard about this. My impression of Jane is that she just really enjoyed reading, and I don't think that she would have been kind of narrow-minded in her choice of books. But the one that I've picked is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Because I think that one of the things that Jane appreciates or seems to value in her own writing and prioritise in her own writing is like really getting her language right.
Yeah.
And Virginia Woolf, again, I think really works hard at getting her language right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think, because when we read Jane now, her books have been around for so long and are so influential, we sort of assume that they're kind of normal books for the time, whereas actually I think that they weren't.
Yeah.
You know, she was.
Yeah.
I think so. Like Virginia Woolf is a very innovative writer, and I think that Jane could have appreciated that.
That level of innovation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that. I think I agree with that. I think
Mhm.
she'd have enjoyed that.
So which is yours?
I went with a theme of something that would be similar enough to what she was familiar with, but also subverting that in a similar way to how she did in her writing, which was Invitation to the Waltz by Rosamond Lehmann.
Oh, right!
Which I almost...
Tell her. Do you know, I so nearly chose a
Really?
Rosamond Lehmann book.
I knew. I was thinking, if there's a book that we've chosen the same, it might well be that one. Invitation to the Waltz is, I think it's from like 1932 maybe? Late 1920s / early 1930s, and it's about a young girl I think she turns like 17 or 18, and she gets invited to her first formal dance. And it seems like the kind of Cinderella premise, but as she goes through, it's like her dress doesn't quite fit, and you know, things don't quite turn out the way that you would hope that they would turn out in your romantic ideal of a ball. And I think that really ties in with what Jane sometimes writes about, where things don't quite go the way that the main character wishes that they would, and there's kind of like this idea of romance and then the reality of how things go. So yeah,
and all those kind of like anxieties and uncertainties
Yeah.
that you have when
And
you're like
when
a
you're
young
a
woman,
teenager.
and there's a lot of pressure to like shine in a particular
Yeah.
way.
and conform,
And
and
conform.
there's all of the social machinations, and there's also, I think she has like a sister as well, so there's like the kind of sisterhood dynamic of, am I as good as my sister at the same time as loving your sister? Yeah, so it's a really, really lovely book, and I think Jane would enjoy it, and again one that is beautifully written.
Yeah, and I would also say if there's anyone out there that hasn't read any Rosamond Lehmann, just
Go on and read it. Yeah,
August, make that your thing.
definitely, particularly if you love Jane Austen.
Yes.
I really do think that you would probably love Rosamond Lehmann as well.
And another really beautiful writer of words and language. Quality stuff. So, the next question is a book on our shelves that we think that Jane would hate.
So
You go first.
I've gone for a book that isn't actually physically on my shelves,
Yeah.
but I'm counting as my shelf all of the books that I have read.
So it's a metaphorical shelf.
Yeah, it's always a metaphorical shelf.
Yeah.
And I'm picking Twilight by Stephanie Meyer.
Yeah.
Because, not just because it is the very kind of ridiculous, over-the-top kind of horror-type story that Jane would have liked to subvert and criticise and laugh about.
Yeah, she'd have written a Northanger Abbey.
Yeah, she would absolutely
of it,
have taken the piss out of it, excuse my language. But also because, ostensibly, the main character of that book's favourite books are Jane Austen's books.
Yes.
And there's this ridiculous scene where she is reading, she's like goes to read Sense and Sensibility, and then she's like, oh no, the hero is called Edward, and I'm in love with this guy called Edward, so it's just too similar to my real life, except it's just not.
No.
And it's appalling, and Jane would have been righteously furious about it. Anyway,
Brilliant.
so that's the book that I think that Jane Austen would have hated.
That's a great choice. I like your choice. Now, I found this quite hard.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anything like Twilight on my shelf.
Yeah.
And not even on my metaphorical shelf,
Yeah.
really, yes.
And you were saying that you think that Jane would be quite open-minded, and she wouldn't really hate many books.
The book that I've chosen that I think she might have hated is Moby Dick by Herman Melville, because I wanted to pick for this. I wanted to pick a book that I think is a good book.
Oh, I see.
That she would have hated, because that is. It seemed too easy to just pick like
a book that she disliked.
That was rubbish because it was rubbish.
Yeah.
Whereas Moby
Which
Dick,
is the option that I chose.
Sorry.
Sorry to all you Twilight fans.
Yeah. Whereas like Moby Dick is a brilliant book, and I think it's a wonderful book, but I just have a feeling that Jane would not have liked it. She writes, that of the little bit of ivory quote about her writing. She polishes and really kind of refines down and condenses, whereas Moby Dick's sprawly, has lots of digressions, and you think you're getting some plot, and then it's like a whole load of stuff about whaling and so I think she'd have thought that like Melville should go back and rewrite it and do it properly this time. Edit, exactly. And also it's a very blokey book. I can't think if there's not really a female character in it, or there might be like somewhere in the inn at the beginning or something. But I mean, I nearly picked something by like someone like Saul Bellow or Don DeLillo, that sort of big American novel of like pompous men.
You don't think she would like
Jane has
macho books?
Jane has pompous men, like
she destroys them.
She destroys pompous men. So.
But then I think she did read a lot because of the reading materials that were available at the time. She did read a lot of kind of male-centered books.
True.
But then probably also took them down and
I think so.